what a great conference, and I think what a relevant topic, breaking barriers, the future of mental health, emotional well-being, and power of mind and spirit. I think today, everywhere, if we see, we talk about wellness, well-being, mental health, emotional health. I think we have everything that we need in this world, but somehow we are still unhappy, right? I mean, we're just talking about it, that you have access to all the gadgets, all the best of the best food. You have health clubs and you have spas and everything, but still, you know, there's some incompleteness. So that has to do with this topic somewhere, and we have a set of great speakers who have practiced, you know, how to build that connect for the overall well-being, and we will hear from their journeys, from their expert advice that befits and benefits you. And if you have any questions towards the end of this, we'd love to take those questions for the audience as well. So let me start, you know, my first question. Alefia, let me start with you.
Sure.
You know, as a transformation coach, how do you define the connection between emotional resilience and spiritual awakening, if I have to ask you this?
That's a beautiful question, actually. And in my understanding, spiritual awakening is just a little further or a little harder without emotional resilience. Now, what do I mean by that? The main thing is, let's first start with what is spiritual awakening. Can anybody in the audience would like to answer this question?
Please feel free to participate.
Please feel free.
Yes.
I want us to interact so that, you know, we can have fun together, because only information can sometimes become a little taxing. So yes, I would love it if you guys would.
Wonderful. I think such beautifully explained, and I like the participation of our audience here. So let me go to Ms. Sabherwal here, you know, who is the you know, thought leader in holistic nutrition and meditation. And you know, Ms. Sabherwal, I mean, when we talk about emotional well-being, we talk about feelings and thoughts. But here, you can relate it to your gut health, to your food that you ate. You know, I suddenly walk into a room and I'm feeling sad. Everything is fine. I have spoken to my wife, kids, but still I'm unwell. Something is missing, but I just had a coffee, but I don't know, unconsciously, my food has interfered with me. So in your work, how does food, gut health, and emotional well-being intersect? You know, how are they interlinked?
So they are very interlinked, right? Because what you're eating is what you are. They say what you are is what you eat, right? And what you're eating minute to minute and what you're drinking minute to minute is actually showing up. It's like cause and effect. Yeah, you eat something and it shows up immediately. So like you said, I'll have a cup of coffee and I get a little shaken up. It feeds your anxiety. So if you're already a person who's anxiously prone, you're going to be more prone to getting anxious if you have the coffee. So food is definitely related. And if you look at our Indian plate is very wholesome. But there is a lot of stuff that we're doing today because we're exposed to so much. So therefore, the sugar is in our diet, the coffees are in our diet, the tea is in our diet, and so many things pull us down. We often ask ourselves, what is it that we should eat to make better skin, better hair, better moods, better gut health? But we don't look at what are we eating right now which is not suiting us. You know, you want to have that collagen powder to make better skin, but you're not willing to give up the sugar, which is causing depletion in collagen. You know, so we focus on what not to eat. If we start focusing on that, instead of what to eat, I think that's where the solution of our problem lies.
So in the Indian context and the Indian plate that we have every evening or afternoon, how do we make it in a way, or the habits that we have?
So, you know, I can't give you a one-off, because if I start talking, people are going to say, well, then how do we live? She's taken sugar out of our diet. She's taken dairy out of our diet. She's taken processed, refined out of our diet. Everybody's screaming on Instagram now on everything that doesn't suit you. But then you say, well, how do I live? I believe in wearing one hat, especially when you have a problem. Let's say the topic today, mental health. I get a lot of kids today who are coming to me in their early 20s who are either having OCD or having serious depression, who are under psychiatrists, who are, with mental health experts. And one is the environment. The environment is triggering them because there's so much of social media influence. But the other is also the way they've eaten and the way they are eating. I just had a mother yesterday and she said, my child ate what I ate, what I've eaten always. I said, no, I beg to differ. You ate much better than your child. Because when you were eating, there was no Subway, McDonald's, and Swiggy and Zomato and all of that, right? Your child is eating all of that from the day she was born. So there's a big difference in the way you laid your foundation for your mental health and the way she's laid her foundation for mental health, right?
I think somewhere also what we consume is not the food itself. The food is also what you consume, like in a
your food is
highly-
80%, so don't
Yes.
say that mental
No,
health
what I mean
is
what I
not
mean
dependent
say,
on...
what you consume on your phone, constantly being there,
Yeah,
that also does, right?
It's a huge part
Yes.
of what it is, but I think food is 80% of who you are.
Right.
Food is a lot about the way you think. I mean, I started Vipassana 30 years ago. I started my health practice much after, like almost 20 years ago. So there was a 10-year gap before I started my practice. So in those 10 years, I ate really badly. And I know what a basket case I was. And then when I started eating better, my practice got better. And my moods got better. And I pulled myself out of situations which were not defining me at all. So food has a lot to do with it. When they say sattvic food, it has a lot to do with it. So the way you eat does govern everything.
And precisely the menu that we had curated for the same reason today. Mr. Nath, we also hear about a 30-year-old founder, very fit, on the treadmill, collapsing, very successful businessman, just not, being able to sustain his emotional, physical well-being. So what are the biggest emotional and mental health challenges that you've observed in high-pressure corporate environment, and what is the best way to deal with that?
So as Shonali said, let me now talk about the balance 20%.
First
It's
of all, your
80.
voice is so soothing, huh? I must accept, yeah?
80% is food, and I do not disagree at all. I think what you're saying is right. But the balance 20%, if it was mathematically to be that way, is about your mental well-being, right? And I think your question is allaying to that. There is no one straight answer. Stress comes from many situations, right? And stress is more to do not with the situation that you are in, but your response to that situation, right? There are lots of, so each one of us has an intimate and a personal definition of being spiritual. And for me, I think I look at it in two ways. One is being more aware, I think, is more spiritual. Because if I start to drive in a one-way street, my first reaction is, from the opposite side, my first reaction is, what is wrong with everybody? Why are they driving the wrong way? But the moment I get into the awareness that this is a one-way street and I am wrong, I don't think anybody needs any corrective mechanism. You'll find a way to back your car correctly and drive along the way, which means basically you got that correction going, right? So becoming aware is very, very important. From the foundation that I represent, Art of Living, and I specifically look at the corporate programs because we do a fair amount of deep work in several aspects. So we loosely call it the corporate programs, but we touch a lot of government institutions, everybody who's in a job there, right? We touch, we include into this our paramilitary forces. There is a lot of work that we do in the higher reaches of Srinagar and Kashmir, because constantly courses are going on there to de-stress people. And then, of course, the question that you asked is about the corporate, the set of people who are in high-pressure corporate jobs with either Indian companies or multinationals or whatever, it doesn't matter. So I think the moment you become aware that this is not tallying with me, What I liked about the morning immersive session, I think some of us were here, right? Not all of us. The music session that happened, right? That gentleman kept saying, become aware of what's happening, become aware. He repeatedly said that, right? And I don't think, so one is that, what is becoming aware meaning to me? Is it, I must listen more carefully? Well, there is, of course, that's part of being aware. But I think, are you here and now? When I'm talking to you, are you here and now? And if you are, chances are that you're not that stressed, right? Because you're in this moment, right? There are lots of books written about it, the power of now and lots of other stuff. But I think becoming more aware is important. And I think we have to stop romanticizing stress. I think a lot of us take pleasure in the fact that, and I don't think it's pleasure. I think it somewhere subtly feeds into our egos, right? I have a call tonight from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. with a client in the United States, and then I have to leave for the airport at 4 a.m., right? Don't normalize it. It is all right to do it. Become fitter mentally and physically to be able to handle it if that is the requirement. But don't normalize it. Do not romanticize it, right? Let that not be a kick into my ego and show to everybody around me that, you know something? I think I've arrived, right? I'll take a pause here because I don't know if...
It's very interesting. And some people would say 80-hour, 70-hour work week, and then, I don't know. We'll come to that. My next question, Alefia, since we have less time, I want to come to the third question instead of the second, then I'll come to the third.
Okay.
What are some real-world practices that individuals or the audience here can adopt to move from chaos to clarity as far as the emotional side is concerned? Anything for them?
Sure. So there are a lot of tools actually which I'm sure most people must be aware of. But there is one tool without which none of us can do without. And that is your breath. So none of us can do without, we can't even miss a single beat or a single breath. So one of the most easiest and simplest tool is what I teach my clients also, is that whenever you feel intense emotion, irrespective of whether it is intense joy, sometimes, I do feel that kind of joy, or I want to go on top of the building and scream my lungs out. And then equal intensely, I feel grief sometimes where I want to scream my lungs out. What normally happens is when you feel intense emotion, the first thing is that your breath gets erratic. And if each human could just become aware and conscious, that bring your focus back to your breath, whether it is in the middle of a fight, in the middle of an argument, or in the middle of receiving an award, just make sure that you bring your focus back to your breath. Couple of deep breaths. Let's do it together, right now. Just deep in. Fill your lungs. Let it go right up till your diaphragm. And then breathe out. We'll take one more breath by breathe in through your nose, and we'll release it through our mouth. All right, breathe in. One last one. Breathe in through your nose. The entire energy of not just every individual, unanimously in this room has changed. So use your breath as the best tool to bring yourself from chaos to clarity.
It's your emergency SOS. Just go there and just fix it and you're sorted, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great. Ms. Sabherwal, you are a Vipassana meditator. How has Vipassana changed you personally? And how can we benefit from those elements? What are given the daily routine we have, the daily chaos we have, the way we live, in our times today, What do you suggest that we can do from the elements of Vipassana that we can
So I can't really get into the whole of Vipassana, but I can tie in what the speakers have said. So Jaideep said that the biggest freedom in you realizing your spiritual awakening, correct me if I'm wrong, is your response to a situation, right? So we have 6 sense doors, and our responses are coming out of them through our mouth, and through we see something bad and we react. And then we're talking about breath on the other hand, and we're looking at coming back to breath. And how many of you have done Vipassana in this room? Okay. So if the whole theory behind Vipassana is it starts with observing your breath below the nose and above the upper lip in this triangular area. And we do that because, I'll give you an example. If you think, and this is Goyanka ji's example, that let's say your breath is the dog, and you have to tie that dog around a pole, and your nose is the pole. So you're going to take the leash of the dog and tie it around the pole. Now, if you think of that analogy and you start observing your breath, which in the 10-day course you do for 3 whole days, for 10 hours a day, basically you're training the mind to go away from gross and come to the subtle reality of the mind, right? So it starts actually with the breath. And then when you start going into that, and I know Art of Living has a different modality, but basically the goal is the same. When you start with that and you finish that part of the meditation, you've silenced your mind by the 3rd day, and then when they take you actually into, you talked about sensations, because everything that arises, when there's a stimulus that comes in front of you, the first thing that happens is there's a sensation. It's not your response comes after. So there's a gray area between the stimulus and the response, which is awareness. And Vipassana is just teaching you to tap into that awareness. It's teaching you to tap into the gray area. So basically, everything really is simple. It starts with the breath, right? Whichever modality you are using, whether you're using the Art of Living Kriyas, or you're using Vipassana, or you're using some other meditation, the bottom line is that's where your freedom is. You know, your response to the situation and your attitude towards it and your reaction towards it is going to determine whether you're going to multiply karma or not, right? So to answer that part of your question, that's what Vipassana does. And because I've done it, I've been able to help myself and my clients, because now I bring it into my work. It just becomes a part of you, and it becomes a part of who you are. So barring the fact that I've been able to work on my own self, and your learning actually comes out of stress and not out of being calm. So let me just tell you that, the more unstuck you are, the more you're going to learn about yourself, and the more stuck you are, the more you're going to learn about yourself. If you think you're going to be calm and learn a lot about yourself, you're mistaken, right? So you have to learn how to go through those unstuck moments with a lot of calm. And for that, you need a modality. And Vipassana becomes one of the modalities you can use. Art of Living becomes, am I right? One of the modalities you can use. And your freedom really is in that response. Your freedom from everything in life is really whether you choose to react or not. And what I learned, because when I came to Vipassana, and I'll give you a personal example, I grew up an angry child. I grew up with a father who tried to control me too much. He was very, controlling of me because I was the oldest daughter. My mother was very liberal. And I grew up with a brother who had different rules, and I had different rules, and that caused me to get more angry. And then I went into a marriage where I had a husband who triggered just all of that, so I got more angry. And then within the first 2 years of marriage, I decided to do a course. And it changed the way I started reacting to situations, because now instead of reacting, I was in awareness, and I was observing, and I was not letting out those accusations and those, reacting to him all the time or reacting to the environment. And the truth is, what Jaideep said is true, that everything begins with you. So if you have this victim mentality that, the outside is controlling, you have to shake that up too. So, it's changed me in ways that I can't really get into right now. It's too short a discussion, but it has changed me as a person. But I think what's the best thing that came out of it was that I could use it to deal with very difficult cases that come my way, because I deal with lifestyle diseases and try to help people with food. So they come to me with a lot of emotional upheavals as well. So then to deal with that, be compassionate, and most of all, be present to them. We all say, live in the now, but I think the biggest gift you can give someone is if you anchor yourself in the present and be with them. A lot of people in this room, while listening to us, are on their phone. That's not being present, right? And I'm not pointing at anyone, but I'm just saying the biggest gift you can give to someone is being present and being in the now. So I think a lot comes out of it,
Right.
if I've answered
I
your
think
question.
today's lifestyle and phones don't let us, be in the now also. And if you are like delayed in our, I'll say, journalism environment, if you're delayed by like 5 minutes on your WhatsApp, you will be saying, what happened? You're not looking at your messages. The culture we're living in itself is a very
Yeah, but
challenging
every WhatsApp
culture.
and every phone doesn't mean you have to answer it.
Absolutely.
So therein lies your choice to choose the response you're going to give to that situation, right? You have to consciously learn how to work with your phone face down and not get triggered and have time for WhatsAps.
Absolutely.
Nothing's going to
we
there's
need to
nothing
control it
earth-shattering
rather
that's going to
than-
happen unless you have a parent who needs your attention, right?
Absolutely. Mr. Nath, the part 2 of your answer, which was very interesting in the first half, can we continue with that with some practical examples of your observations and what can be implemented for the overall well-being?
So I basically want to make 2 comments on what my fellow panelists were talking about. As a foundation, we do a lot of work in prisons, right? So I have personally been to many prisons, worked very closely with the inmates. And if you ask them, ki kya hua tha? And I'm not talking about pathologically, or people who have a psychological issue and stuff like that. But especially where the volumes of prisoners come, the petty crimes, the altercation on the road and an accident that could have been avoided and stuff like that. A lot of them turn back and say, Sir, ho gaya, pata nahi laga. Gussa aa gaya tha. So that is the point that Shonali was making earlier, that just that pause in the middle before you, basically it's all about how we like to play with words, the difference between the reaction and response. I think, and I've seen this very closely and how deeply it has impacted that life, right? And several years are gone. Well, if just that for 3 nanoseconds, if something had just been more sane in the person's mind. What you want me to talk about now is the journey forward, right? So from the corporate, and I want to keep it focused on that because, so firstly, I think, do I believe in art of living? The answer is yes, I've been with it for about 25 years. So, but the point is not art of living, and the point is not Vipassana, the point is not yoga. The point is the awareness that this needs attention. Then you choose your path, right? Anything that appeals to you. There are lots, and being in India, I think, is a privilege because I think you have more resources available and more readily available to you should you decide to do something about it, right? So if I had to give a takeaway, if that's the intent, I would just urge everybody to take responsibility for themselves on both fronts, the physical health and the mental health. So you meet a lot of people with great awareness towards physical health, but not as much attention to mental health. And then you meet the vice versa as well, so try and draw the balance out there, right? Right. And I like the way you spoke about your phone, and if you just go back into that there is, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to take a pick at anybody, but I think somewhere we have accepted the fact that this intrusion is acceptable, right? And that acceptance is what I'm urging ourselves to challenge. Like what Shonali said, that work with the phone upside down, right? Apple introduced something called Focus in one of their software updates, and I tend to use a lot of that, because there. So there's a very interesting book called Deep Work by Carl Newport, and I read that book, and that author speaks about our ability to do undisturbed work is really going to be a premium skill that we can develop over time, right? And if you link everything along with it, eating with awareness, and taking care of your mind, body, space, giving time, is a very simple adage which says that whatever you will focus on will grow, right? You focus on health. आप cooking पे ध्यान देना शुरू कर दें, आप एक हफ्ते में आपके घर में बहुत अच्छा खाना बनना शुरू हो जाएगा. You just start paying more attention to it. You say that I want to start running, and you start paying attention to it. Chances are that in 3 to 4 weeks, you're making rapid progress, right? So our focus and the ability to focus on something will make that piece grow. So I'm saying that get the awareness that this needs attention, number one. Now, very briefly about the corporate piece. There are two sets of clients that we have. Clients, I'm loosely mentioning them as clients because they sign up with us formally, and hence the word client comes, right? There are some organizations that we see that they firmly believe that there is a great intention to do meaningful work in the well-being of employees, right? And there are some organizations we feel where it is purely a lip service, right? And I many a times have these discussions with the CEOs or the CHROs of those organizations, or L&D heads, the learning and development for larger organizations, that how do you meaningfully bring this as part of it, and how you can build a culture where you kind of genuinely demonstrate that you are interested in healthier employees. Again, when I say healthier, it's always in two pieces.
Holistic way. Yes, yeah.
The holistic, the mind and the body.
Right.
Does that
absolutely.
answer?
Absolutely. I was just saying that I had one more panelist who is not here. So my audience is my panelist here. So we can have a couple of questions quickly. Do I have time for 2 questions? Yeah? Okay. Please, thanks, because I just got a cue that, but let's not try it during the break, otherwise we'll get delayed, but we can try it at home for sure.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts, and I think I gave you enough time to explain. I didn't cut short the answers, but such a great discussion, from your side, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.